Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, bonjour, good afternoon. My name is Nancy Antil. I'm the Chief of Protocol for the Parliament of Canada and your Masters of Ceremonies today. I'm pleased to welcome you to the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians annual memorial service in virtual mode for the first time. Nous venons d'écouter l'hymne national interprété par la musique centrale.
We just heard the central band of the Canadian Armed Forces.
Gathers is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabeg people. Nous nous rencontrons virtuellement aujourd'hui pour rappeler le service.
We meet virtually today to remind the service, contribution, and life of parliamentarians that left us this year.
Senate of Canada, the Honourable George Fury, and the Speaker of the House of Commons, the Honourable Anthony Rota, to offer remarks.
Chers parlementaires, anciens collègues, familles.
Dear parliamentarians, friends, colleagues, welcome. Hello to all.
To be gathered here virtually to remember and honor the lives of the parliamentarians whom we have lost in the last year. At a time when many of our cherished rituals have been scaled down or cancelled due to the pandemic, it is important to preserve these ceremonies and to pay tribute to those who are no longer with us. Chacune de ces vies est inextricable.
All these lives are inextricably linked to us, visibly or invisibly.
Past and present share a special connection through our common vocation. It is a bond that transcends partisanship and bridges our differences. It connects us not only to each other, but to the Canadians whom we are called upon to represent. The 53 parliamentarians whom we honor today work diligently and tirelessly to serve their communities and our great country, Canada. Their contributions reached far beyond the walls of Parliament and endured long after their tenures on the Hill ended. Nous rendons hommage à ceux qui se sont dévoués à défendre.
We pay tribute to those who devoted themselves to defend the interests of Canadians.
Themselves so that we might build on what they have achieved. May each of us draw upon the experience of those who came before us. Let us inherit the immense value of knowledge and understanding that stems from having lived a life in service to our great country. Au nom de tous les sénateurs de la Chambre haute,
on behalf of all the senators of the Red Chamber, I wish to present my sincere condolences to all those who lost a friend, a colleague, a parent, a close one, or a loved one this year. Wisdom, integrity, and devotion of these people will be sorely missed.
Today, as we reflect on the lives of those whose memory we honor, we thank them for their guiding example and the spirit of inspiration that leads us onward. Let us remember them always.
Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, we gather today to remember and pay tribute to the distinguished parliamentarians lost to us this last year. This virtual celebration of public lives and public service gives us, the family, friends, and colleagues, past and present, the opportunity to acknowledge the lives of these men and women who served their country and their fellow citizens ably, and with dedication. While I'm disappointed that we cannot, for the moment, come together in person, I am grateful that we are still able to share this day together. Nous qui servons au Parlement sommes conscients que le travail que nous effectuons.
We that serve Parliament are aware of the work we must do every day. But it is not always a contribution that's recognized by our fellow citizens. However, the MPs and senators that we lost this year put their talent and energy to the service of their fellow citizens and the country. The world is a better place thanks to their passage among us.
Let oneself feel the loss of a friend, a family member, an admired colleague. But at the same time, I think there's solace to be found in our feelings, our gratitude that they were part of our lives at all. Remembrance need not always be painful. It is also a chance to heal. On behalf of all members of Parliament and all members of the House of Commons, I offer sincere condolences and passing of too many dear friends and colleagues from Parliament. They and all the men and women who we remember today sought to make our country a better place. We are the poor for their departure, but the richer for their time on earth. J'offre mes condoléances les plus sincères à tous ceux et celles.
I offer my sincerest condolences to all those who grieve, a grief that we share with you.
I invite you now to listen to the piece Highland Cathedral, interpreted by the Serenade of Strings of the Central Band of the Canadian Armed Forces, accompanied by piper Tim Reed. Chaque année,
Every year, the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians organizes this ceremony, which is an opportunity to take the time to remember and to thank these men and women, all former parliamentarians that we've lost over the last year.
honor the parliamentarians who have left us, to remember their service and the mark they have left on us, our parliament, and our country. I invite the president of the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians, Ms. Dorothy Dobby, and the Honourable Jean-Pierre Blackburn to lead us in the reading of the honour roll call. Our musical interlude will be the piece Gabriel Zobo, interpreted by the Central Band of the Canadian Armed Forces.
Dear friends, we pause today to remember former friends and colleagues who have passed away over the past 18 months since May 2019. Today, 53 souls are being honored, 52 members and 1 honorary member. While we mourn their passing, we celebrate their lives, their service, and their indomitable spirits. Serving in Parliament is not a task for the weak of heart or body. Each of the members mentioned today demonstrated those principles through their contributions and with their longevity. You have to be tough to serve, and they were. 19 of these colleagues were over 90 when they left us. 6 were older than 95. 16 were 80 plus, and 12 were in their 70s. 9 were women, and of these 9, 5 were over 90. Each of them gave Canada their very best. To be born to serve in public takes a strong will, amazing grit, and complete dedication to the job. To be in Parliament requires strength, courage, and sacrifice, something never more important than now while we're going through a crisis where leadership and a steady hand is so important to the future and health of our nation. In the words of former Prime Minister John Turner, democracy doesn't happen by accident. We know, too, that it was not just the members who gave so much, but their families who supported the members through sleepless nights, through gut-wrenching decisions, through incredible criticism, and living under a microscope. But for all that, not one would have had it any different. As Canadian poet Bliss Carman wrote, "And though all dying nature should teach him to deplore, the ruddy fires of autumn shall lure him but the more to pass from joy to stronger joy as through an open door. He shall have hope and honor, proud trust and courage stark, to hold him to his purpose through the unlighted dark." And as author Shannon Adler wrote, "All death reminds us nothing is promised, only that life was worth it."
Bonjour, chers collègues.
Dear colleagues, serving people is never an easy thing, especially for our elected members. Those who choose to serve have to make sacrifices and difficult choices. Many of these choices affect their families. However, our society would not be as prosperous without these men and women's devotion. They were ready to make these choices. The Right Honourable Georges Vanier, our 19th Governor General, said the following words during his inaugural speech in 1959. Each one of us, in their own way and to the best of their ability, brings their full participation to our national future. Our future will be prodigious. If we want to see that future, let's look beyond the horizon of our time. As we move forward, as we are enjoying material goods, let us not forget the spiritual values that are in our lives. If Canada can achieve greatness, each one of us only has to say, "I only want to serve."
Honorable James Abbott hailed from Toronto, but found his lifelong home in the Kootenay Mountains of British Columbia, where he was elected in succession for the Reform, Alliance, and finally the Conservative parties for a total of 17 years. Post-politics, he was involved in many community endeavors. Edna V. Anderson took the riding in Simcoe Centre for the Progressive Conservatives in 1988. She was 66 when she ran, and her win demonstrated her iron will, her determination and grit that stood her in good stead until she passed away at 97. Prior to politics, among many other things, she was a concert pianist, a career businesswoman, and very active in the community.
L'honorable Jean.
The Honorable Jean Bazin was a friend like no other. He was always present, and his support was unwaverable and authentic in the darkest of times. That man was built for friendship. That's what former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney said. Jean has been a vice president of the Standing Committee of International Affairs in the Senate. Réginald Belair served his constituents with distinction in the riding of Cochrane Superior and then Timmins James Bay for over 15 years. He was the parliamentary secretary for the Minister of Public Works. Michael Burrow had a smile that went really well with his political career. He was a member of the City Council for Oshawa in 1973, then a member of Ontario's Legislative Assembly, where he was elected 4 times. In 1990, he ran for a federal election, and he followed Ed Broadbent as a member for Oshawa.
John M. Buchanan was appointed to the Senate by Prime Minister Brian Mulroney in 1990. John was much loved by his province. One of his eulogizers said, "He was the finest street politician I have ever seen, remembering everyone by name and context. He really cared about the person he was talking to." The Honourable Aileen Carroll was a fiery and very funny person and an inspiration to many, said the Mayor of Brampton and a former MP, Patrick Brown. She spent her life serving the public, first as a municipal councillor in Barrie, then as the Liberal member of the Ontario Legislature. In Parliament, she served as Minister for International Cooperation. Harry Chadwick represented Brampton as a progressive conservative. After a decade-long stint as an alderman for that city, he was a receiver and warehouse worker in the automobile industry and served as president of his Canadian Auto Workers Union local.
Comédienne et chanteuse.
A well-known singer and comedian before beginning her career in politics that lasted 18 years, the Honorable Audrey Champagne was a very warm person. Her role as vice chair of the House of Commons was the natural way for her to continue her career. She represented Saint-Bagot, and then she moved to the Senate, where she represented Grenville. Bernard Cleary was the first Innu member of Parliament who was elected under the Bloc Québécois in the riding of Louis Saint-Laurent. He was the Bloc's critic for Indian and Northern affairs, and he also was a defender of Indigenous rights. As a journalist by profession, he never feared to speak truth to power.
Sharper mind, he will be remembered for his comments made with his eyes closed while he rocked back on his heels and delivered stinging rebuttals to the House. He served as a progressive Conservative Member of Parliament for St. John's West for 17 years, occupying several key portfolios, and he shepherded Canada's first free trade agreement to its adoption. He was appointed Lieutenant Governor for Newfoundland and Labrador in 2008. At John's funeral in January 2020, Brian Mulroney said, "If a PM of Canada is lucky, and I mean really lucky, he will wind up with a John Crosbie in his cabinet."
Charles de Blois, personne.
Charles de Blois was a proud person and a good speaker. He was the member for the Progressive Conservatives in Montmorency, Orleans, after being a journalist for TVA in Quebec. He was Vice Chair of the Plenary Committee. Leonard Dinsdale, who was an honorary member, was the spouse of Walter Dinsdale, member for Brandon, for 30 years. Lenore was a devoted volunteer at the Canadian Association for Former Parliamentarians.
Chair of the Standing Committee on Finance and later chair of the Subcommittee on Tax Matters. Murray was a chartered accountant, but his real love was politics, and he devoted much of his post-political career to helping young party members. After a career as a teacher and social worker in Manitoba and following a stint with the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, Sig Enns was elected 3 times as a Progressive Conservative MP for Portage-Neepawa. Filled with life and energy, Sig stayed involved in the community after retirement from politics and then boundless energy to many local initiatives. The Honourable Ralph Ferguson, an Ontario farmer and egg producer, was elected for the Liberals in Lambton, Middlesex, where he became Minister of State for Small Business and Tourism. He also served as the Deputy Government Whip and later as Minister of Agriculture. He was inducted into the Ontario Agriculture Hall of Fame in 1990 for his many contributions to the farm community.
Yves Forêt, membre du caucus libéral, a
Yves Forêt was elected 3 times. He was a member of the Liberal caucus. First, he was a member for Stansted, then for Missisquoi. He was appointed judge at Quebec Superior Court, and he remained there for 20 years. Michel Gauthier was a passionate politician. He was the member for Roberval-Lac-Saint-Jean. And during his mandate, he was the leader of the Bloc Québécois as well as a member of the opposition opposition. He has been a member of Parliament for over 13 years, and he was a Bloc leader for the majority of his career. Gilles Doucet, former leader of the Bloc, said that he was a great teacher who knew how to explain things very easily.
By Prime Minister Paul Martin in 2005 after a distinguished career in law. He was the only Canadian lawyer to have been elected a Fellow of both the American College of Bankruptcy and the American College of Trial Lawyers. As a senator, he was a champion for social justice, tolerance, and respect. James Hawkes was elected in Calgary 4 times for the Progressive Conservative Party. He was Chief Government Whip from 1988 to 1993. As a young man, he was a chess master and a university basketball star, later becoming a university professor. He was a man with a warm heart and was honored with a Distinguished Service Award in 2011 by the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians. George Henderson represented Egmont PEI as a Liberal. Prior to this, he was a member of the PEI Legislative Assembly. His son Robert now serves as an MLA.
L'honorable Charles Hubbard, ancien député libéral de Miramichi, était le secrétaire parlementaire.
Former Liberal MP for Miramichi, the Honourable Charles Hubbard, was Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Indian Affairs and Northern Development and Transport Minister. He was a reservist in the Canadian Armed Forces for many years, becoming Major in the adjoint and support commander for the 2nd Battalion of the Royal New Brunswick Regiment. Maurice Johnson was MP for the Progressive Conservatives for Chambly-Rouville. He was elected judge at the Municipal Court and the Court of Quebec. All his career was devoted to the research of truth and justice. Elected member of the CCF for Kindersley, Merwin Johnson was a champion farmer. He was president for the NDP for 1963 to 1965.
Hall of Fame in 1969. The Honorable Leo Kolber was a Liberal senator for 20 years. He chaired the Standing Committee on Banking, Trade and Commerce. A well-known philanthropist, he was also a dedicated fundraiser for his party and was chair of its National Revenue Committee. He worked to promote ties between Canada and Israel. In 2007, he was initiated as an officer of the Order of Canada.
Eva Lachance-Côté.
Eva Lachance-Côté was a Liberal MP for Rimouski during the 32nd Parliament. She was a municipal councillor in her community and was renowned for her tenacity and combativity.
Néo-démocrate.
Laverne Lerky was an MP for the New Democrats in Dauphin-Swan River, Napinoa. He was interested in multiculturalism. He worked as a teacher in college and university in several provinces.
Harry Lafond of the Muskeg Lake Band in speaking of the Honourable Bill McKnight. Bill was Minister of Indian Affairs and Northern Development and later Minister of Defence. As a token of respect for his work as Treaty Commissioner for the province of Saskatchewan, Bill was made an honorary chief, Chief Eagle Feather, by the Cree community he loved and served.
Léonce Mercier est décédé à l'âge de 93 ans après une...
Léonce Mercier died at 93 years old after a long and brilliant career as a business person and organizer for the Liberal Party and a staunch defender of Quebec inside Canada. He played a key role in the campaigns of the 3 prime ministers in Quebec and of 2 prime ministers of Canada.
Lieutenant in the Royal Canadian Navy. After retiring from the Senate, he was instrumental in establishing the Movement Disorder Institute at the University of BC and was a founding chair of Lester B. Pearson College of the Pacific. He was recognized with an Order of Canada in 1980. He's remembered as an outstanding fisherman, raconteur, and a gifted martini maker. Aideen Nicholson served 3 times as a Liberal Member of Parliament for Trinity. She was a parliamentary secretary to several ministers, including Consumer and Corporate Affairs, Postmaster General, and Supply and Services. Aideen was the recipient of the Distinguished Service Award from the Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians in 2003. Always willing to speak his mind on any topic, Patrick Nolan served on the Tory backbenches for 28 years, representing the people of King's Hunts. He was the son of Diepenbaker's Minister of Finance, the Honourable George Nolan. Pat had a personal touch with constituents that kept him in office for so long. He loved swimming, tennis, and squash, and reading history and thrillers. The Honourable Nathan Nergetz was chair of the Standing Committee on Legal and Constitutional Affairs, as well as several other committees in the Senate. In 1987, he became chair of the Canadian Group of Interparliamentary Union. Later, Nate was appointed to judge of the Manitoba Court of Queen's Bench and deputy judge at the Nunavut Court of Justice. A previous Canadian Association of Former Parliamentarians president, Leo Duguay, said of Nate, he never asked for much, but he gave a lot. Tanzanian-born Calgarian, the Honourable Deepak O'Brien, was the only Hindu to become a Canadian Member of Parliament. A Conservative, he was Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. He was appointed to the Queen's Privy Council by Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Jean Payne was the Liberal Member for Parliament for St. John's West and was dedicated to the fishery and to Newfoundland and Labrador. Her impetus to run for elected office stemmed from this passion after the fishery was closed in 1992. In private life, she was known as a fierce and successful businesswoman. He was a proud Islander, said PEI Premier Dennis King of former Liberal MP George Proud. He was always a source of wisdom and kindness. George served for 12 years as a Member of Parliament for Charlottetown. Previous to his election, George served as MLA for Hillsborough in Prince Edward Island and as a city councillor. NDP member of Thunder Bay, Rainy River, John Rafferty, had a winning smile and he cared deeply for people. A radio broadcaster, he later opened his own media business. he twice introduced a bill to deal with fetal alcohol syndrome. Mark Rains served as a Liberal member for Burnaby Seymour. Mark was a member of the Standing Committee on Broadcasting, Film and the Arts. As a journalist, he once interviewed Elvis Presley. He was appointed to the CRTC after politics. The Honourable Gerald Reagan served as an MP on 2 separate occasions. He was first elected as the Liberal member for Halifax until he resigned to run provincially. He became the Liberal leader in the legislature and then became Premier. In 1980, he ran again for Parliament and was appointed Minister of Labour and later Minister of State for International Affairs. An avid sports lover, he won a significant tennis tournament at age 77. He's remembered by his colleagues as being bipartisan, open-minded, and fair. The Honourable Brenda Robertson was a trailblazer. She was the first woman to be elected an MLA in New Brunswick, where she served in several ministerial positions, including health. She was appointed to the Senate in 1984 after serving as a Progressive Conservative member in New Brunswick for 17 years. She was made a member of the Order of Canada in 2008.
Romuald Rodrigue était député du Parti Crédit Social dans Saint-Georges.
Romuald Rodrigue was MP for the Parti Crédit Social in Saint-Georges-de-Beauce. He was director, administrator, and accountant. Benoît Serré, an accountant, MP, Liberal MP for 10 years, was the first Francophone MP elected for Timiskaming. He was a proud defender of his roots, Indigenous and Algonquin roots.
15 years, he was elected as an NDP member for Comox's Hubble River. He was his party's critic for Western economic development, fisheries and mines, and energy. Ray and his brother Bob were both MPs in the 34th Parliament. After a career in civic politics in Toronto, the Honourable David P. Smith served for more than 18 years, first as a Liberal member for Don Valley East and then as a senator representing Cobourg, Ontario. David was known as a great champion for disability rights and was credited for having the disabled included in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. He was well respected and was considered a kind and generous man. The Honourable Raymond Squires was a motel and service station owner, a city councillor, and then mayor of St. Anthony, Newfoundland and Labrador. He was appointed to the Senate by Prime Minister Jean Chrétien in 2000. He was made a member of the Order of Canada in 1997. Lethbridge was represented by Progressive Conservative Blaine Thacker for 14 years. He served as Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministers of Consumer and Corporate Affairs and Transport and to the Minister of State for Agriculture. He was an effective constituency man, bringing many federal investments to Lethbridge. He received an Honorary Doctor of Laws from the University of Lethbridge in 2006. The Honourable Greg Thompson was swept out of office with the rest of the Progressive Conservatives in 1993. But he came back in 1997 to win 5 more elections. He served as the Minister of Veterans Affairs and introduced the Veterans Bill of Rights. After retiring from federal politics after more than 18 years, he ran and won as an MLA in New Brunswick, where he became the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs.
Jean-Noël Tremblay, homme de grande culture.
Jean-Noël Tremblay, of tremendous culture, a teacher, was Progressive Conservative MP for Roberval. He represented the provincial riding for Chicoutimi as a cultural affairs minister. He became a member of the Order of Canada in 1990. Member of the Bloc Québécois, Suzanne Tremblay was an MP for Rimouski-Témiscouata. Convinced nationalist, she was the first elected woman to be parliamentary leader in the House of Commons.
Canada's 17th Prime Minister. During his years in Parliament, he held several ministerial posts, among them Justice and Attorney General of Canada and Finance. John had a long and varied life. He once held a Canadian record for the 100-yard dash. He was a Rhodes Scholar and a lawyer. He was also an excellent swimmer, and in 1965 he made headlines when he valiantly rescued John Diefenbaker from drowning in the waters of the Barbados. He married Gilles, the sister of longtime parliamentarian David Kilgour, who called him a gentleman statesman without equal.
Georges Villeneuve, avocat de profession, a été député libéral de 1953 à 1958. Il a par la suite été maire de Mistassini.
Georges Villeneuve, a lawyer, served as a Liberal Member of Parliament from 1953 to 1958. He was later the mayor of Mistassini. He founded the Mistassini Chamber of Commerce and the Festival du Bleuet, in addition to having been president of the Hospital Center of Dolbeau.
As an alderman on Abbotsford City Council. He will be remembered for his beautiful singing voice and being part of the MP5 singing group. Overwhelmed with pancreatic cancer, his final speech to the House was a powerful call for a better palliative care system and for his colleagues to love one another. All these men and women gave their very, very best to our country. They served with honor and dignity and made a contribution to the Canada we cherish today. They were committed to freedom and to a future that prizes democracy as the best way of life that the world has ever devised. We honor their memories and thank them and their families for all of the contribution they made.
I now invite you to join us while we take a moment of silence. It will be followed by the lament. Each of the men and women whose public service we're remembering today contributed in their own way to our country, and they deserve to be counted among the people who have shaped Canada. We're truly honored to have shared with you the accomplishments of these great women and men, and to pay tribute to their loved ones. Notre cérémonie virtuelle tire maintenant à sa fin.
Our virtual ceremony is now ending. Thank you for participating. To end the ceremony, please listen to the royal hymn. Merci. Thank you.